Good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Gilkerson. I manage programs for Trailhead. I am really excited for everyone to be joining us today. Really excited for the folks we have on the call, and for we have some people from Perkins, Coie, and AppDetex, as well as Trailhead's board of directors here today. Trailhead, for those of you who don't know, is a entrepreneurial support organization. We're a public-private partnership with the city and a myriad of organizations across the state and region, including Perkins Coie as a founding member of Trailhead. So it's really an honor to have them here today. I want to give a quick shout out to TM Rostigar, our executive director. He's judging Boise State's Idaho Entrepreneurial Challenge as we speak. So he's neck deep in judging pitches of college students across the state. Otherwise, he would be here and is here in spirit. With that, I'd like to quickly just share my screen. Give me just one moment. And then I will go right into introductions. So first off, just really quickly, the topic for today, again, this is Koffee Klatch with Trailhead and Perkins Coie. We're going to talk about the when, why, and what, the 3 W's of hiring a lawyer. When do I need a lawyer? When do I engage a lawyer? And what are the differences in lawyers and firms? First, I'd like to introduce our friends from Perkins Coie. First and foremost, we have Melanie Rubocki, who's the managing partner of the Boise office and member of the Trailhead board of directors. I think for longer than I've been around at Trailhead, which is over 5 years. She also runs a really cool business group within Perkins Coie. She has a foundation in finance and entrepreneurial studies from Morton School of Business and brings a sensibility and reasonableness to her counsel. Really excited to have you here, Melanie. Thank you. Moving on to Derek. Derek regularly advises startups in emerging and growth in privately held companies and venture capital funds on equity, debt, and financing and other corporate transactions. Derek actually is someone that we work with regularly, Trailhead as an organization. And so it's really cool to have him on here and sharing his knowledge and depth of the startups and the legal environment with us here today. Jump into our guest speaker today. And I don't know if I mentioned, Melanie is on our board of directors at Trailhead. Faisal Shah, who's actually the chair of our board of directors we have on the call. Faisal is a great guy. His office, AppDetex, is actually right next door to Trailhead. And he has successfully started and exited several successful startups and actually helped launch a myriad of programs through Trailhead, including one that I'm close with, which is called You Lead Idaho, where we work with rural Idaho high school students, giving them entrepreneurial skill sets and scholarship money. So with that, I'd like to kind of pass the mic over to Melanie, and we'll get started on a short presentation, and then we'll get into questions.
Yeah, so the concept, can everybody hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, okay. So the idea of Koffee Klatch, we came up with this with Trailhead because we feel like there is sometimes a divide between, entrepreneurs and founders and folks that are trying to just start a company and lawyers in the community. We like to think of ourselves, lawyers, we kind of think of ourselves as the dentists of the business world, right? Like no one really wants to visit a dentist. No one really, is like, yay, it's my 6-month visit. It's time to go to the dentist. But, if you practice good oral hygiene, then you have a great set of teeth. And if you don't go to the dentist regularly and you don't go for years and you don't talk to your dentist and you don't do stuff, then you'll start to get cavities and you'll get decay and things may not go well. So we kind of think of ourselves as the dentist, right? Like the necessary evil of the corporate world that if you have a good relationship with a lawyer, one that you can trust, one that you have open communications with, you can, really have good corporate hygiene with your business, and you can really avoid some traps for the unwary. And the idea of Koffee Klatch is to kind of break down that barrier, right? Create a forum with, the members and hopefully soon to be members of Trailhead, and just have an opportunity. Our goal is to do it once a month for a half an hour. Derek and I have thought of, giving topics so that there's something to talk about at the Koffee Klatch, but we're completely open to topics that people might want that we're not sensitive to. You know what I mean? That maybe, you know, we're not as in the trenches. And with this inaugural one, who better to have as a guest than Faisal Shah? Faisal and I have been buddies for a very long time. But more importantly, Faisal's a you know, recovering attorney. I always joke with him about because he was smart enough to leave the trenches of private practice and branch out and do some really creative, innovative things with companies. So he's now on the other side. And but because, you know, he, you know, was in law and still peripherally is in law, and has that you know, that background, he has a great perspective of, you know, how you can interact with a lawyer, you know, what works, what doesn't work, and why even, you know, create a relationship, why even have that relationship with someone. So Faisal, we thought that we're kind of a little bit out of order here, but like, you know, why does someone even need a lawyer?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, having been an attorney myself, I mean, you know the importance of having a lawyer, and then after starting a company and starting Mark Monitor, you realize how critical it is and how where lawyers come in. So if you really start thinking about it, and you have a startup, I mean, the first thing you're thinking about, and I don't know why this is, but what gets you really excited is I got to come up with a name. Right? I got to come up with a name because somehow if I come up with a really cool name, I'm more committed to my startup. It's a strange founder thing, I think. So, but even as simple as, hey, I'm going to come up with a name, I got to get that trademarked, right? And I got to make sure that I don't come up with a name where the next day I get a cease and desist letter from another company out there that says you're using my name, and everything that that went into it just goes to the wayside. So you need an attorney to be able to help you not only clear that mark, but also to you know, trademark it with the USPTO, and you know, if you're going, you know, internationally, you'll have to do additional work as well. So as simple as that, as simple as, hey, I need a name. You need to bring in counsel, right? You need to bring counsel to help you with that. And that's like, that is at the very, very beginning. But then lawyers intersect almost every single thing that you do. And why do you bring in lawyers? It's because if I think I want to go public, or if I think I want to, if I want to bring in financing down the road, even seed financing, I better have all my ducks in a row, and I better have my my cap table figured out. I'd better have all my, you know, customer contracts figured out. I got to have my my intellectual property and disclosure, non-disclosure agreements with all my employees. Every single thing that I'm doing now touches somehow in the legal arena, and I got to make sure that I do it right. Because I can guarantee you when the audits come from all your investors, they're looking at all that stuff, and anything can create a problem for you down the road to get financing. That's why we bring in counsel. I've always brought in counsel at the very start, just to develop a relationship with that counsel, so that counsel understands me, my business, and where we're going, and so that when I'm going back to them and saying, hey, look, I need you to look at this, or I need you to look at that, they'll be able to give me good advice. I don't know if that helps.
No, Faisal, I think that that's great. And I think, Derek, you're going to, just so everybody kind of understands our format, again, this is our inaugural Koffee Klatch. We solicited some questions in advance, but you're free to ask them, you know, as we go along. Matt was able to get us all the questions that everyone who registered in advance. So some of you, hopefully you're here, the ones that asked some of these questions. So the idea of our PowerPoint and our presentation is to cover some of those questions that we knew about in advance. And so, you know, Derek, you know, you and I've worked together for a while. You know, when is the right time to engage a lawyer?
Hey, yeah, Melanie, I think you have a question in the chat, by the way. So.
Oh, yep, I see it. Thanks, Faisal.
And Matt, can you go back one slide on that? We'll just keep it there for a couple more minutes. There you go.
Absolutely.
So it's a great question, and Faisal kind of touched on this, right? He talked about from the beginning. You know, he also mentioned Series Seed as you're going out looking for investors, trying to decide on a name. You know, there's really, I guess there's potentially a few reasons why you would be, you know, little apprehensive about engaging a lawyer, right? One may be that you just feel like ignorance is bliss, right? Just keep your head down and work on your idea. It's better to
Derek,
just
I have Google. I don't need lawyers.
Yeah,
I can just
exactly.
get on the
Exactly.
internet and figure it all out.
It's better just to not know, right, what I might be violating, and we can clean it up later. Another potential is, hey, it's going to cost too much, right? I'm a startup. I just don't have the dollars to put out right now, and I hear that lawyers are just really expensive, right? Or it's also, I've got this, I've done my research. I think I understand the legal aspects, and I'll take it from here. And so I think those are three areas that kind of play into this reservation to connect with an attorney early on. And so, from our perspective and just the experience that we've had with startups, early is best, right? Typically when you're trying to build a relationship with a lawyer, take the time to interview a few. Most attorneys are going to be willing to do some sort of meeting with you, up front to help get an understanding of your business, what it is you're trying to accomplish. And, you can work on determining whether there's a good fit there, a good potential relationship to get help in the future. And then from that standpoint, once you've had the chance to interview and find one you think is, a good fit for what you're doing, then getting them engaged early. Most attorneys, hopefully, right? Most attorneys aren't keeping the lights on just by incorporating your company, right? Or giving you early advice. Chances are they can work something out on the fees, do something reasonable, for a fixed fee type of deal to incorporate your entity perhaps. Be able to just get you set on a good foundation, perhaps provide, as Faisal mentioned, some forms that can help you as you're considering, hiring employees, protecting your IP, et cetera. So really in engaging early is the best. From a cost efficiency perspective, there may be some small fees up front as you do this, but Melanie and I have fixed plenty of companies, and the cost of fixing issues that were ignored early on is just exponential compared to the cost of just doing it right in the beginning.
Yeah, we always say, I remember years ago, we went to this, I went to this presentation that Guy Kawasaki put on, I think it was Guy Kawasaki that put it on. Faisal, you may even remember this. And they were talking about like mottos and coming up with like, short little mottos instead of big executive summaries. And, I always thought for lawyers, it could be something like, you pay me now or pay me 2 times later, right? Because it always costs more. To Derek's point, it always costs more, to unwind things and fix things, on the back end. And when you're doing that, you're often just making yourself whole again. And that's what people don't realize. They worry a lot about the cost of things, on the front end, but the cost is usually incremental compared to litigation. You know what I mean? And dispute resolution. And, one of the questions we always get, and I think we'll cover it a little later in the next slide, is, what's the cost of litigation and that? And it's like, it can be a lot. Facts and circumstances, it can be a lot. But the prophylactic of taking care of it early, getting that relationship with somebody early and having someone, help you with your contracts, make sure you're not, getting into any pitfalls and stuff, can really avoid a lot of that cost, down the road. Faisal, how does somebody even find a lawyer? How do you find a lawyer? What do you do?
Sure. Let me, there's a couple of, something in the chat here where it's curious about the legal documents. Let me address that, the different legal documents that you need. When we, and I'm sure other firms do this, but when we engaged with Perkins, one of the things that we got from Perkins was a whole series of documents that we can use in our business, like NDAs and invention and secrecy agreements and all that stuff that is really good, because those things have to be updated, and we can't take the time to update it, but Perkins takes the time to update it. So whatever they give you, even at the outset of your relationship with them, is really critical, that you can use right away. So yeah, so all those documents, even in development, I think Sidian is saying that he developed an app. yeah, they'll be able to provide to you. They're templated, but I'm telling you that, you would have to pay a lot of money to be able to even get those things done from scratch. In terms of being able to, in terms of finding a lawyer, I mean, there are a lot of good lawyers. So there's lawyers. A lot of there are good lawyers here in Boise. There are good lawyers in Silicon Valley. Salt Lake's got lawyers. I mean, but you have to find lawyers that are working in the startup world, right? Because I think in the startup area, I think it's critical that they understand the nuances of what you're going through from the very outset, and they can pick out issues for you that you would not necessarily see on your own, right? And so if you're looking for and you have to make a decision, are you, what is it that's really important to you? And I think especially for a startup, it's all transactional. And being able to get good lawyers who have done this time and time again for startups, which is being able to put together those governance documents, being able to put together those NDAs, and being able to give you advice because it might be nuanced to your particular business. Being able to give you advice if you're doing, if they work with other app companies, hopefully they have the experience to be able to tell you, for example, what you would expect to see happen with your particular company. So I think when I'm interviewing, lawyers, I'm actually looking for the experience that they have in not only in the corporate world, but also with other potentially enterprise software companies or app companies or whatever it is, whatever area I'm in. I'm looking to make sure that they've got that kind of experience as well.
Here's a good question that, so along the lines of finding the right lawyer, Faisal, and I think you started to touch on this. I think what's important for some of you, because you guys are loading up the chat with some really great questions, you know what I mean? Like some really, really, really good questions, which makes me appreciate that maybe Koffee Klatch was long overdue, you know what I mean? Because understanding the relationship, I think, is half the battle. And you should, when you're looking for someone, you should understand how they price things. You should understand what kind of things they can do for you. As Faisal mentioned, things like NDAs and stuff like that, a lot of that stuff, the formation of an entity and NDAs and things like that, a lot of that is, template and form. It's the substance that goes into it that's where the lawyer can bring the value, right? The experience of understanding, where are the pitfalls? What if I do this? Derek and I have worked on a number of companies, for example, that, they use LegalZoom, they go set up their entity, the forms are fine, right? But they don't think through buy-sell agreements, for example. And that's going to be a topic we talk about in some coming sessions. So they have no roadmap for exiting with their partners. What happens if one partner shows up? What happens if another one doesn't? Just those little things. That's where I think a lawyer could add value. And very often lawyers will meet with you and talk to you about your issue, you know what I mean, without charging for that time, you know what I mean? It's the work later down the road where folks will get charged. And if you can create a relationship, I think Sidian, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Sidian asked the question and I started to answer it, is it normal to only meet with your lawyer 2 times? I don't know that there's a right answer for how many times you meet with your lawyer, but I think you should meet with them, as often as it takes to cover whatever your legal needs are. And so, when Derek and I, for example, when, we sit and meet with a client, we'll sit and talk about, like, where are you? What's your vision? What are you trying to accomplish? Where are you going? And then we'll create kind of a legal wants and needs roadmap. What are the things that you have to do and what are the things that you'd like to do in the future? And, that does 2 things. One, it helps people roadmap out what their legal needs may be, but it also helps, from a cost perspective, what are the things that you should be spending your money on? Think of law as insurance, right? It's like an insurance policy. It's bonding around your business to make sure that your risk is mitigated as much as possible. And so, a good law relationship, you'll feel that with that person. You'll feel that that person's got your back and that they're helping you mitigate risk and do things that are, smart about your business. There's never absolutely no risk when you go into business. You know what I mean? If you're starting a business and you're looking for zero risk, you're probably not an entrepreneur. But that doesn't mean you have to live with 100% risk. And there's definitely a lot of smart things that you can do along the way to help mitigate that risk. Derek, in your experience, our clients that don't succeed or kind of meet the success that they want, how often is it because of the idea versus just failure to execute or some other mitigating issue, fighting amongst partners or things like that?
Yeah, it tends to be the latter, right? It's something that comes up later on. We've seen it in plenty of clients that we've worked with where the wheels just start to come off the cart, and it just costs so much time and money, right? But the time and the distraction away from your idea and executing on it is just killer to the company in so many cases. And I think too, to kind of touch on, what you mentioned as the roadmap, and there's a comment in here just with respect to, not having too many variables at the formation of the company and whatnot. And it's a good point, Ernest. And it really does depend on, the business as it stands, right? Maybe you're an individual that's just going at it alone. You're gonna, you've got the business idea, you're not looking to bring on employees, you're not looking for investors, et cetera. Then the variables may be very few. But as you consider, your business and how you plan to grow, maybe there's another investor, maybe you need some money, maybe you've got some employees you want to incentivize and want to try and, include an employee, options in connection with it. And so that roadmap is really important. And it's really important to understand in the beginning, even though formation, the act of filing articles of incorporation or the act of, filing the certificate of formation for the LLC, that's not a heavy lift, but understanding really the vision of the company and what you anticipate doing in the future is important. It's important to understand that early so that you can get the right help that you need.
And one of the questions in the chat, and I say, Matt, you can move on to the next slide. One of the questions in the chat was, about entity type, and I kind of addressed it in the chat, but that will be our next topic because that in and of itself is a topic. Again, we're trying to keep these things, so that people can be asking questions, but a lot of the things you're asking are really great. The things you should be asking. These are the kinds of questions that people should be asking. And I think, Derek, to your point, you said just like merely filing, the articles of incorporation or organization, depending on what the entity type is, ties in, Faisal, with what you said earlier about the name, right? Creating an entity is, I always liken it to, it's birthing an unnatural person, right? That articles of organization or incorporation is the birth certificate of that unnatural person. And so naming it is extremely important. Like there's all these things that converge, right? Whenever you're just setting up that entity for the first time. And, if we had $1 for every client who went out and just like created a company and was able to set it up in a certain name, only to find out that like when they went to trademark it, after they have like product on the table, right? They're selling to farmers market, they're doing things like that. And then they find out that the name, they can't even use it, right? Like maybe they could use it in Boise, Idaho, but they can't use it when they want to like, scale it to a bigger platform. Those are the ones that always make me sad. Because a little bit of, they've got labels made, it says Mom's Jam, whatever on it. And then you come to find out that, sorry, Kraft has that name or something, and they're going to squash you. You can't do it, So you're on the other side, Faisal. How do you maintain a good relationship, with your lawyers and your law firm? How do you keep them in check?
I don't know if I guess it's hard to well, I mean, I guess I in terms of legal costs, let's look at it that way. And I think everybody's always concerned about that. You know, there's a lot of different ways to work with your counsel so that you're reducing legal costs. One way is to really understand where your risks are and when to bring legal counsel in, and when there are things that you can do that you don't really need to bring in outside counsel. It might be, you know, in some case, it could be as simple as, not even as simple, but it could be that, you know, you're having an issue with an employee, and you're concerned about the liability that can attach to it. So you bring in outside counsel to be able to manage that. Because I think what you have to look at is the risk to the company. How big is the risk to the company if I don't bring in legal counsel and I do this improperly? And so that's how I kind of look at things, right? And then I bring in legal counsel to be able to address something that I think a situation that can pose a very large risk from my company. I'm not going to bring legal counsel in for every single thing, but certainly on the really big issues. And then, you know, I call counsel when I need, you know, if I just want to bounce something off and, you know, off of them. And that's the reason why you want to have a good relationship. If you don't even like your counsel, you're not calling them, right? You want to like them. So you'll just jump on a call, you know, you call their cell and go, look, I just got a really quick question for you because I'm just wondering about this. And you know, they might give you an idea that you didn't even think about. You go, okay, or you know, this is not a problem, which is why you want, and I think I'll end with this, which is why you want counsel that is, you know, I've been an attorney for a long time, and I know when I have a counsel that understands business and law. A counsel that understands business and law is a very attractive, you know, trait that you're looking for, because they can look at all the risks and say to you, this is not really a big deal, don't worry about it, or this is a risk, and here's what you got to do to mitigate that risk. You know, whatever it takes. But if they're pure, if they don't understand the business aspects of it, they'll give you counsel that is going to, which is basically going to be no, don't do it, right? Because they don't want you to take the risk. But we're always taking risks as businesses, right? So you want somebody who can actually explain to you the risk, but also tell you whether or not they think, in their opinion, based on their understanding of business, that it's something you should do or you shouldn't do. So, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
No, I think it totally makes sense, Faisal. And I think that it's an important point that people need to understand that lawyers aren't the police. They're not the business police. They're not the business cops. You know, they're not the principal of the school or the superintendent, right? You know, the role, forging a good relationship with a lawyer will, you know, create that exactly what you're looking for, Faisal, right? Create that ability to say, you know, hey, yeah, you can go do this. Here's the potential risks we're outlining, but it's nominal. An example I always give folks, sometimes it makes people like, you know, antsy, but, you know, we've had clients in the past that, you know, it would cost them, you know, $1 million to retrofit a manufacturing facility or $10,000 to pay an EPA fine. You know, it's like, I'm not the judge on which decision you're going to make, right? But you just need to understand, like, you know, here's, you know, $1 million to go get that scrubber put into the, you know, whatever you need to do. And, you know, alternatively, here's your $10,000 EPA fine, right? You know, so.
Melanie, here's the other thing. I mean, when you really start thinking about it, here's how I look at it. And this is how where it can actually go off the rails. You get a contract from a potential customer. Well, actually, you're not pretending. You're working with them on negotiating, you know, your offering, and you send over the customer contract. They look at it, and then, you know, they redline it, and then they send it back to you, and or they send you their contract over to you because they don't want to use your contract. They send you their contract, and you send it over to counsel, and counsel then redlines the entire thing. So the entire document is redlined. Oh, so you're like, okay.
Super helpful.
Counsel, you send it back over to the company, and they look at it and go, I'm not doing business with you. This is crazy. what you're going to look at, because lawyers can look at every single one of these provisions and find a problem. So this is what I'm trying to say is you've got to find counsel that can look at that and say, you're probably not going to run into that issue. It's okay. Yes, you're going to run into this. You probably need this because this is a problem that's going to happen that you can run into down the road. So you need to have this provision in there. And I would fight for this provision, but you don't need to fight for all this other stuff. That's how you get deals done. Otherwise, forget about it. You're going to spend the entire time going back and forth, and then the client was going to walk away.
Yep.
I was looking at that one.
That's a really good point, Faisal. And I think that a lot of that too comes with that relationship, right? As you work on these agreements, with counsel, we're able to better understand the risk tolerance of our client, right? And so when we get one of those agreements, we can say, hey, look, the client doesn't care about these things. Here are the 5 factors that we know the client's going to care about. And so that's where that efficiency comes into, is that relationship and experience that you've developed.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of fit in there, and meeting you where you are as a startup, and really good feedback, Faisal, on that example that you shared.
Yeah. Melanie, you want to close it out?
Well, yeah, I was looking at some of the chat. I was just saying, so I don't fully know how our Zoom room is working, Matt, but we can certainly let people ask some questions. Our last slide, I mean, we had a few other slides just talking about like the next event and stuff. I mean, our last topic was just, we kind of divided this one up into 3, right? Like, when do I need a lawyer? How do I get them? How do I maintain the relationship? And then how do I know it's over? Right. And so we can certainly open it up to everybody, Matt. I think on the last topic, of just like, because I think somebody asked that question of, how do I know when to keep working for my lawyer? And, or when do I need to start looking for alternatives? I think to the answer to that question. If you're asking the question, when do I need to start looking for alternatives? I think you already know that you should be looking for alternatives.
Right.
But it's always good to, I mean, I think the theme, Matt, as you've been saying, is you've got to be comfortable with who your lawyer is. I mean, I think the whole gist of this is that you've got to be comfortable with who that person is. This doesn't have to be someone that you're hanging out with every weekend, right? Like, you don't need to be best buddies and be doing whatever, but it's got to be somebody that, if you've got friction or tension, or you think that they're not, giving you good advice, it's probably not the right fit. I mean, it's like any relationship in life, right? Totally. I mean, if it's a struggle, then it's probably not it's probably not the right relationship. And so that's kind of the way, I would address that. And, most lawyer relationships are free agencies, right? I mean, you kind of pay as you go. So, depending on where you are as a company, to me, it would be really important to find the right counsel who can grow with you. If you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a company, a lot of times we see people say, oh, I'm going to start with, XYZ because they're small, their rates are less. And when I grow, I'll come there. You know what I mean? Or when I grow, I'll switch or whatever. And Faisal, I don't know if you have any thoughts on it, because you kind of touched on it for different reasons earlier. But to me, sometimes the switching costs, are difficult. You know what I mean? And the more, developed your business becomes, like the last thing in the world you want to be doing is switching out folks at that point, unless the relationship's just not working and you have no choice. But I think if you work with, there's a lot of firms that they'll grow with you. They'll grow with you both from a rate structure, they'll grow with you from a relationship standpoint. And it's important to understand, like, what's your company going to do, and does that firm have that skill set? Are they working in those industries? Do they understand the kinds of pressures that legal pressures that you may have? So that would be kind of my thoughts on that last topic of, when's it time to, move on? I don't think it's a stage in your company. I think it's a stage in the relationship with the lawyer.
And Melanie, on that note, one question I had is there any, what are the ways that Perkins kind of is currently kind of helping kind of like meet and fit within that startup? I know you guys have some cool stuff going on with Percolator, and just wanted to ask you about that.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Thanks for asking. I feel like we're propping up an infomercial, which we do not intend. We do not intend that on any stretch.
No,
But I do appreciate the ask, Matt, because we have a lot of, and I think that it's important for folks to know that, to ask, and I mean, I'm sure we're not the only firm that does this, but, we have a lot of startup packages, and we have a lot of just alternative fee arrangements, I mean, sometimes folks don't want to just pay a per hour. They want to just know that, setting up their company is going to cost this, or doing a financing is going to cost this, or doing a trademark, is going to cost this. And so we have a lot of those kinds of, packages. Oh, I see a question. Do we do any pro bono work? Yeah, we do pro bono work. I mean, but pro bono is usually for folks that are, nonprofits or indigent, folks that, so in other words, like a startup who doesn't have money yet isn't a pro bono client. Necessarily, but we have a lot of packages for folks that are diverse in nature or minority. We've got a ton of packages for folks. We call it our Lead Better series, and so we've got a lot of pricing and just different programs that we run for different groups, whether they're, Black, Hispanic, women, veteran groups. We have a number of different packages, particularly aimed towards, folks of those, groups, and trying to help them develop.
Yeah. No,
in addition to just regular startup packages for, other regular folk.
Totally. And I think that's just good for the audience to know that those are around there. In the same way Faisal kind of shared that red line example is, if you do engage with a lawyer and you have, conversations and they aren't syncing up and they just you're not getting those warm fuzzies, they're not matching up. And generally in what we've talked about today, do reach out for a second opinion, and resources are out there for startups, including Trailhead and Boise Startup Week. Really, really great conversation, you guys. I love the dentist analogy. I love my dentist, but I only see him twice a year. A lot of red flags, unique services for startups specifically, and really looking at engagement with a lawyer as something that it can be something that will help you along your process and set up the foundations to grow your startup, but also can be a strategic and competitive advantage as you grow and scale. If you find someone that understands your business, the industry, and you as a person, and that fit is there. So I just want to thank you so much, Faisal, for taking time out of your day. Melanie, Derek, thank you so much, and Perkins for supporting this. And I love the engagement, loved the feedback. I look forward to seeing you all on the next one. I shared that screen. We'll be following up with that RSVP link, as well as a recording of today's session. Any last words from any of the audiences, or do we have any last questions that we want to wrap up with?
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Can you share some of those packages you talked about, Melanie?
Yeah, we're gonna Tiffany's gonna give us some links on that stuff, I think. Tiffany, are you still with us? So we're gonna put some links in the chat. We have a whole
typing it up right now.
Excellent. Thanks, Tiff.
And Tiffany, if you want to even get me those links, I'll make sure they're emailed to every registered participant to this event after.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat, and then I'll make sure that you have those 2 links, Matt.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Any last questions?
And I think somebody asked the question about, is there a list of lawyers in the Pocatello, Idaho Falls area? I think Margot did. Margot, you don't necessarily, I don't know if Matt, you have a list, or we can get you some names of folks. I mean, whether a firm is like, next door to you or, around is kind of a personal choice. A lot of folks, don't feel like you have to have there's lots of good lawyers out there, but don't feel like you have to have a lawyer who's down the road from you. Sometimes, if it's like a trust estates issue, folks want somebody who's like down the road, right? Because you want to be able to go sit and talk about those personal things, kind of face to face. Business, we have clients that I've never even met them in person. You know what I mean? They're like across the, 2 time zones away, but they like us and they use us. And then I've got other folks that, insist on meeting for coffee. So I think it's important, so Margot, if you're that person who wants to meet, for coffee or whatever, I'm sure someone can get you some folks' names in the Pocatello, Idaho Falls area, but don't feel like you have to be down the road from somebody if you're not that person. It's more important to find somebody that you're comfortable with. Not that they don't exist in Pocatello, just saying. I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everyone. I really
Wait, we got a hold of.
appreciate.
Do we have more messages? Sorry.
I
know
been
we're way
following up.
over, so people don't feel like you have to stay on.
I think we got most of them. I'll be talking, sitting with you about setting up time, and then again, I'll include my email address in the follow-up. If you have any questions, want any kind of context, please do reach out. And on that note, I'm gonna cheers my coffee at this very first Koffee Klatch, and thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, look forward to seeing y'all the end of next month. And thank you so much.
And definitely share with Matt or any of us, Derek or me, but, Matt's obviously at Trailhead, any thoughts for, we have a slate of topics. We're going to do this monthly. If we think we need to do it more regularly, we can certainly consider it. We just didn't want to inundate people and make it become mundane. But we're open to topics that people want to chat about.
Yes, feedback welcome and appreciated. As Melanie said, this is our inaugural one, so
yeah, no pride in the format at this juncture.
Can't be as a startup, right?
Nope,
Always
you
learning.
can't be.
Always
Gotta be
learning,
nimble.
always growing.
Gotta be nimble. Gotta be pivoting.
Awesome.
And Faisal, thank you so much. I'm seeing all kinds of folks who want to kiss the ring. They're asking if they can meet you in person.
Absolutely. I have to get a ring.
There you go. I'll keep an eye out. I'll keep an eye out around Trailhead. All right. Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.